So, good afternoon, everyone. I'm Dr. Jean Fourie, and I am taking on the next step with you on adolescent development. We are going to be spending the next three sessions, 3 weeks, looking at adolescent development, and we are going to be looking at what are various facets of adolescent development that are key for an educator and a teacher to know at their particular level of development. So we can't look at a person and look at all the aspects simultaneously. So we are looking at various different domains of functioning for adolescents. We're going to look at physical development. We're going to look at cognitive and language development. We're going to look at social development of adolescents and all the associated emotional and moral aspects around this. With this unit, in fact, with this whole theme on adolescent development, there is going to be a fair amount of theory that we are looking at that adds value to each of these particular stages. On Blackboard, you will see that, well, when I open it, I've just got final things to add to the Blackboard. You will see that there is the domains of functioning are there, physical functioning. We're going to look at cognitive. There is a section on social and a section on emotional and moral development. So these are all the key areas that we are looking at with adolescent development. And for us as educators, it's important to relate everything directly to what are the implications for us as a teacher. What does it mean to really understand these developing young people that we are dealing with, and what do I have to do in my classroom and my school in order to assist these people? When we look at adolescence, adolescence is that phase between childhood and adulthood. It generally starts with the onset of puberty, so when the child is starting to become a sexually active adult, we say that the person is entering their adolescent phase. The actual age that this takes place can be anywhere between 11 and about 13 years old when it starts, and it's generally at the onset of all the features of this sexuality. And various different cultures have different times when adolescence, the phase ends, and it can be anywhere from about 18 years to 21 years old. Because it's the time when society has decided and accepted the person into adult society, and they get legal rights and the ability to drive a car, for instance, and do adult functioning activities in the society. For us as educators, it means that we are dealing with a group of people, learners, who are in a key stage of their development. They are very vulnerable to influences around them, and so it's important for us as educators to be aware of the educational implications of teaching adolescents. During the late childhood phase, so up to about the age of 11 and 12 years old, children are increasing in weight and muscle tone, so their bodies are becoming heavier and their muscles are getting stronger and bigger. They start taking on the proportions of an adult. Generally, arms and legs grow much longer and quicker at this time. And when we have a look at the health-related issues of children, it tends to be the late childhood phase that now I'm talking about, from the age of about 6 to 11, 13 years old, a very healthy time in children's lives. All the gross motor is your movements, your ability to walk, bend, move your body, the big, what we call the large movements, are getting refined. And so people's coordination is better. Children are able to take part in sport and do all sorts of various different activities. And we also have a great increase in fine motor coordination skills. Fine motor are all the movements associated with your fingers and your lips and your eyes moving, everything that's required for doing the things we need at school, for writing and reading, copying from the board, reading textbooks, doing mathematics. All these things require very good gross, the big movements, and fine motor skills to be in place. And of course, children are becoming more independent, self-confident, socializing with people, and so it's a very, usually a very happy space for children at this time. We then go into the adolescent phase, and this is often associated with an accelerated growth and bodily changes. The mature adult proportions are developing very quickly during adolescence. So we're talking from about the age of 13 to about 18. The child's face becomes adult looking, the adult features develop of the face. The coordination can sometimes become clumsy at this time because of this accelerated growth. So what can often happen in adolescence is that the learner can develop clumsiness and poor coordination simply because of that great acceleration of the growth and bodily changes that are taking place. And of course, all the sexual organs and sexual characteristics are now maturing. The person becomes fertile. There are all sorts of hormonal changes associated with this time, and all the secondary sexual characteristics develop as well. So, for instance, boys their voice will break and get deeper, and girls will develop their breasts and become more curvy. So we develop the characteristics that are associated with the sexual maturation that is taking place. And this is obviously also a time when adolescents are experimenting with who they are, what is their identity, what clothes do they like to wear, and fashions and makeup and hairstyles. And so we are developing our identity as the body is developing its physical maturation as it's getting to that particular stage. At all times, for us as educators, it's important that we are aware of any of the difficulties and that what we call barriers that might be happening in learners at this particular time. And so it's not always a time that is healthy for everybody. There can be learners, and as with life all the time, there can be people who are dealing with diseases and various dysfunctions, problems with self-esteem, and the clumsiness and the awkwardness often associated with being an adolescent can also be relate to the difficulties of becoming an adult. We know that adolescents, because of that increase in their in their growth, because the bones and the muscles are growing so quickly, we know that this can influence their bodies, and often lack of stamina. Different foods are needed, and there can be problems with inadequate eating. And we know from research that adolescents need a lot of sleep at this time. So they do need to be getting more sleep than one would get generally as an adult. And this is because the brain is developing very quickly and the body is developing very quickly. So adolescents should also be getting good, healthy, wholesome meals and a lot of exercise. We do know that some of the barriers, the difficulties associated with adolescence can also arise from diet. This is often a time where disorders such as anorexia and bulimia, where a person is eating because of inadequate emotional problems. We know that this is often a time when these diseases of eating disorders, where they can arise at this time. And the adolescent uses food in order to compensate sometimes for the difficulties that they are having. So as educators, we need to be aware that although adolescence is such a great time of development, and people are keen and eager to become adults and get into the adult world, that it is also a time that is associated with various difficulties and inadequacies and problems that as educators we need to be aware of. So if you see that a learner is battling with their self-esteem and their awkwardness, and they're looking very tired, and they're losing weight, a lot of weight is being lost, then these are some of the key signs that we can look at in order to assist these adolescent learners. I want to have a look at just a couple of supportive strategies that we can use in order to assist learners. And I'm sure that there are various others that you can come up with as we go. We can have particular schools can have feeding schemes, and we know that at schools where the feeding schemes are put in place, where learners are able to get one good meal every day, that those learners do tend to perform better. The body and the brain needs good nutritious meals, and at least one good meal a day is usually adequate in order to ensure that good learning will take place. We can also have schools where there are where we put in place physical activities and challenging things for the learners to do. Learners' cognition is growing, and we will look at that in our next session next week on the 22nd of March. And so putting together activities that are physically and intellectually stimulating are good for adolescent development. And then if we know that there are any learners in our class that have difficulties with, for instance, a child who is disabled and can't walk, or who is in a wheelchair or needs some crutches, that we alter the activities to accommodate for that child's difficulties. We also know that there are some learners who might be having difficulty with their stamina for the whole day or for attending to a long task. And so if that is a major problem, we can look at how do we shorten the tasks and the activities so that the learner has some rest periods and they're able to cope with that. And this is particularly important for learners who are suffering from diseases such as epilepsy or cerebral palsy, some of the diseases such as diabetes, for instance, or if a learner has cancer, any of those physical diseases that people might have, there are ways that we can accommodate these learners in classrooms so that they don't get too fatigued, and so we can modify our schools, our school day, the activities that we give them in order to assist these learners. And then it's important that we also teach learners about their bodies and their physical maturation and their health so that they can stay healthy and so that they understand what is happening with them. I have a postgraduate student who is working in a special needs school. And in this school, the learners are intellectually disabled, but they also have a variety of different physical disabilities. So they have difficulty walking, and they need crutches, and they need various walking assistive devices. And one of the key difficulties that she has in her school is that the girls in the school, because of their special needs that they have, they don't understand what is happening to them when they are undergoing puberty changes. So when they start their menstrual cycles, these girls do not know what it is. And they get very afraid, and they think that they are ill and that they are dying. And so the teachers in the school have to do a lot of support in order to educate the girls around what is a normal, natural time in their development, because the teachers have found that a lot of the time the parents are not doing this education, and so the teachers during their guidance sessions, they have set aside a particular program to assist the teachers with helping these girls to understand what is happening with their bodies and the idea of being fertile, the idea of being sexually active. All these are difficult concepts for learners to understand when they have special needs. And so this is part of what we do as educators when we are supporting learners. Maybe not so much in mainstream schools where children are very where they understand these things and they have access to the internet and knowledge of all the sexual characteristics and things that are happening. But certainly in special needs education, it is a key thing for us to bear in mind to assist learners with. So that is a broad overview of the maturation, what is happening in adolescent development with learners. And so I'm going to stop the recording there, and then I want to talk a little bit about what is on Blackboard,